the downstairs extension, and then I believe you were President, Vic, when you put the members' dining room above it and all.
Correct.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. And I think probably the smartest thing we did was when we extended the pub, we made it so we could put something above it if necessary, the footers and so forth. So, and
So basically, that extension was just the first floor at that point.
when they did it during my presidency, yeah.
I remember that distinctly because the first question was by the architects on the second floor, do we have a base that supports it? And we had to do retesting of the compaction and support. That was done by you, and it was perfect. So we had no concern about putting a second floor above that.
Right.
It became the main dining room. So
Yeah.
remember dining room.
Well, and I remember when we put that up, it was designed to be more of a summer type place, and it was all white, and it was very pretty. And Steve Jackshaw walked into it the first time he saw it, and he says, "My gosh, we've got an ice cream parlor." It was about a year later, I think, that we winterized it so that we could use it all year round without any problem. And another, speaking of Steve Jackshaw, I think one of the funniest things that he ever pulled around here was that it was invitational time again. And he had a friend of his who was in the automobile business down near Mansfield, I believe, or in Mansfield. And they were staying downtown at one of the hotels, because that's where the gentleman from Mansfield was staying, so Steve stayed with him. And they had an early starting time on the third day of the tournament. And they woke up just about an hour before they were to tee off, and there was just no way they could make it. So they jumped in their car and drove down to Burke Lakefront Airport and rented a helicopter and came out and landed on the driving range and made their tee time. It was amazing.
You did forfeit that.
Yeah.
I never heard that. That's a good story.
Yeah, really. Gosh.
With the build out of the pub at that point, Harlan, was the intent to just build one story, or was it a cost consideration not to build something above it at the time? Or?
No, we just figured we would build one story, and then what came later would be fine. And I guess probably at that time there was a cost consideration as far as putting something up above, but fortunately it all worked out, and we of course expanded the pro shop a little bit later, and the cart storage, which used to be over where maintenance is on the north end of the course, and that was a chore every day, bringing the carts up and taking them back at night and so forth. So that was a big improvement.
Well, I'm sure you have some memories of folks like Jerry Boykin or Chuck Lott.
Well, yeah, Chuck, of course, he was one of these guys that he loved his gardens, and they certainly beautified the course, and he kept the course in great shape. And Jerry Boykin I worked with a lot and just enjoyed him. He was a fine gentleman, and I was really sorry when he left. And every once in a while I still see him, and he's doing well. So yeah, and we used to take some trips to foreign courses, like down to Oakmont and Pittsburgh and places like that, and that was always a pleasure. And Jerry had worked for the senior pro at Oakmont. They worked together down at, of course, down in Fort Lauderdale, and Jerry was his assistant, so we were always welcome there, and it was fun. I think it was Lou Worsham that was the pro that he worked for. And then we had a group of guys that we'd play Pine Valley over in Clementon, New Jersey, which probably is one of the toughest courses in the world. And it was built back in the late teens or early 20s as kind of a links type course, and it's got the largest sand trap in the world, which I think is a 1/4 acre, and it's a position course. You have grass areas, then sand, and then grass areas, and like on a par 5, you might have to hit to 3 grass areas, the third one being the green. Or if you hit in the sand, they were called waste areas, so you just hit it and kept on going. You never raked a sand trap or anything, and it was tough. But I do remember that at that course, the first time you played it, they didn't care what your handicap was. They bet you couldn't break 90. And Dave Woodward was with us one year down there, and he went out there for the first time and shot a 76, which amazed everybody. He just couldn't miss. He played a great game that day.
Wow,
And,
76.
76, yeah. And he made a little bit of money on those bets.
I bet he did.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
That's
really.
lights out.
But, so,
Were you ever involved with any of these groups that were going down to Florida to look for properties and they had junkets and things like this?
oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know,
That was always a good deal, I think.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we played some nice courses down there, and you know, there was a pretty good group. We'd go down there and, you know, run into Don Rebar. We played golf with him down there at Bent Pine, and then Chuck Bariano was down there a lot, and he had a course he belonged to, and we played his course, and a couple of different courses that he had belonged to. And then we had, well, like the Durkin brothers used to be, well, Eddie used to belong here, and they belonged to a couple of courses down there that we played. One was called Adios, which was a course patterned after Sharon, and George Durkin and I believe Eddie were greatly involved in developing that course along with Arnold Palmer, and it was a beautiful clubhouse and nice course, and oh gosh, just a great time down there. Paul Williams belonged to Jacaranda. We played that course a lot.
Was that in Florida? Or
That, you know, it's all in the Lauderdale area, basically, up to the Palm Beaches, the courses I've mentioned, and you know, and maybe a little up into Jupiter, really.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
That sounds great.
Yep. Oh, that was a
Fun times. I can see
lot
that.
of fun. Yep. Yeah. So,
Between the game and gin, I think full day's activities.
yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. How about some of the fun tournaments that we've had from the Green Coat and Invitational, like you've mentioned a couple things?
Well, you know, the tournaments were great. I mean, back when I first joined, and for a number of years afterwards, we'd have 4 Calcuttas a season, and you'd have the Green Coat, the Jamboree, the Invitational, and there was always something going on, and the participation by the membership was fantastic in those days. It used to be that from Wednesday through Saturday night, you could come upstairs for dinner, the wives would come along with us. They'd meet us after golf, or we'd just come out together. And Emily Rose would be playing at the piano bar, and Walter'd be serving drinks that would knock your head off. And we just had a great time. And you'd have a dining room, upstairs dining room. The main portion would be half to 3/4 full, for 3 or 4 nights a week. And it was just a great time to belong to the club. It was a lot of fun. And everybody was always in a good mood. Spirits were great.
Tell me about Bernie Hairston. How did he play in?
Oh, Bernie, gosh. I've known Bernie since the early 1950s. He was working at the Lakeshore Hotel in Lakewood, and I would go in there to Rotary Club with my dad if I was home on leave, and I met Bernie at that point in time, and then caught up to him again here at Lakewood. And Bernie was always very gracious and was a focal point here in the club, but taking care of people and making sure everybody was served well, and doing the table-side desserts and so forth, which were always outstanding. And he's just been a good friend over the years. So, yep.
What would you say Lakewood Country Club has meant to you in all these years?
Well, it's been a main interest of my life from the standpoint of the type of business I'm in. Certainly you can't get a lot of pleasure out of doing it, but it has to be done. But Lakewood always was an outlet to see the fun side of life and get away from the business. And so that it's been a very focal part of my life. Yeah.
And how would you say the club has changed in those 40-some years, Harlan? Obviously, the course has changed a little bit, the building we've been adding on to, et cetera, but...
Well, it's hard to say. I think the membership has changed somewhat in that back when I first joined, it was more golf oriented, and with after golf playing gin or having a couple of drinks with the guys before you went home. Where today, I think the younger members tend to certainly use it for golf, but then just pass through on the way to the parking lot to go home. I think probably there are other influences out there that we didn't have back in the days when I first joined, because there were no really great restaurants around. There were a couple of them, but not like there are today over at Crocker Park or the Cabin Club or Savannah or what have you out this way. So people are diversifying where they're going to eat and so forth, rather than making the club their main spot to get their entertainment. So that's basic changes that I've seen. Yeah.
How do you see the future of country clubs?
Oh, I think probably within the next 10 years there'll be maybe 2 or 3 courses on the west side and maybe 4 or 5 on the east side. A lot of the courses will go by the wayside because people's values are changing. Tax laws have changed. It makes it tougher to belong to clubs, and so But I think that is the way. Well, you can see it happening now, and there's several clubs that are just marginal and just hanging on, and they'll probably be gone around us. But I think Lakewood will endure, as will Westwood, and maybe one other one out here. But I just don't see a great future for all the clubs. That's